Escapers! Hello and welcome back to. Oh, I was gonna say Utz Cup. I was gonna do that last time. I did it perfectly, and I messed up. It's okay. We're going live. We're doing it live. Welcome to ScapeCon 2022. I'm with Mike, or OEAO, Orc Elf Army 1. I say it way too often. I memorized it. Mike, how are you?
I'm good, Joe. How are you?
I'm well. I'm very well. We were playing in the three-headed Hydra tournament. Would you mind explaining what that was again?
Yeah, so it's just a fun little team event. It's teams of three, and there's a somewhat convoluted, I guess, pairing process. But essentially, what ends up happening is you've got three players on your team. You all have to bring different armies, and each round you play another team, and so you've got three 1v1 games going on simultaneously, and it's just best two out of three essentially via those simultaneous games. So it's a fun team format that I stole from actually an X-Wing event that does it very similarly, and it works.
Stole it?
Yeah,
or remember, like repurposed. It's like reinventing the wheel. Right?
Sure. Yeah. So
because I don't know, was it called Three-Headed Hydra? I won't tell anybody.
No, it was not.
Oh, okay. Was it like it was the Star Destroyer, X-Wing? I don't know. I'm trying to think of what's a good starship from Star Wars.
It was actually called I forget where it was originally from. Actually, I believe DeRoche, who's part of the heroScape community, I believe he ran it first for an X-Wing event a while back. I can't remember what that event was, but I knew it from an event called Crate Cup, which is run by the Carolina Crates, which is an X-Wing podcast. And I was going to go actually in 2020, but unfortunately, it was going to be in March 2020, but unfortunately, COVID hit and that it was canceled. So,
okay.
But they've done it several years, and it worked really well for X-Wing, and we were looking for a way to do a team format, that wasn't 2v2 on the same boards, because those games tend to go long, and the armies tend to be they got better over the years, but as a whole, the armies were kind of, I don't want to say degenerate, but you saw a lot of Q9s, a lot of Laglors, a lot of Krav, and a lot of Fourth Mass year after year. So it was just kind of like, how can we shake this up,
Sure. Yeah, I mean, that is interesting. So a little background, Mike. You are, is it fair to say, the creator of ScapeCon?
Yeah, so I created it 2 years ago, right? 2 years ago with my dad. Gen Con, heroScape was canceled for a second year in a row, basically, and my dad actually came up with the idea of, well, why don't we just run our own thing, right? And so we kind of just took it and ran, and he became in charge of all the hotel coordination, and then I basically took charge of everything else, and I recruit people to help me with all different aspects, from events to maps to prizes to just you name it. There's t-shirts, dice, so much goes into it, and I'm lucky to have so many different people I can reach out to on to help me on so many different things. So
I mean, there's a large community, and a lot of talented people. At least, if there's one thing I've learned from doing these interviews and the people I played against, there's some talented individuals out there. So that is awesome. And I bring this up because we were just talking about game modes, and even though development is still happening, there really has no one died yet. We haven't even talked about armies yet, of who we even brought. But a real quick question, before we get into all of that, is how do you even decide what events are you going to be having at a tournament like this?
Yeah, so that's the $1 million question, right? It's a lot of time and a lot of thought into creating a varied event schedule where there's a nice mix of complexity levels to the events, right? Just on the rules. You don't want every event to be too complex, but you also don't want them all to be too simple. You want there to be variety in formats and game modes. So, for example, Three-Headed Hydra last year we also the first 2 years actually we also had multiplayer madness, which was usually 4 player free for alls. Again, just a very different event.
Yeah.
This year, we've got a really different lineup as a whole. We're doing a very different championship structure where we're having three-headed Hydra on Wednesday and then 3 big events, really all-day events if you make it to the finals on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then the top players, both in these events and across the weekend, then qualify for what we're calling the World Championship on the Sunday. And so to complement, each of those 3 big events are different, and the Sunday event is different, and each of those really require you to play the game in a bit of a different way. And so, we wanted diversity on that front, but then also what side events make sense, alongside each of those in the morning slots and then in the afternoon slots where more people will not be playing the big event. So there's just, you're trying to facilitate as many, you're trying to facilitate different game modes. And this year especially, I'm putting more of an emphasis. I discussed this with the guys I'm working with on the events this year, and which it's the Maryland crew. It's Ben, Johnny, and Earl of Sandwich. And so, sorry, Ben is Earl of Sandwich, Gucci Boost. And so we're putting more of an emphasis this year on fun on the side events. Not that, we didn't want them to be fun last year, but especially this year, it's like, what can we do that's going to be cool and interesting and fun, because, we've got the big events are I wouldn't say a lot more competitive, but they're all working really towards that goal of the World Championship, which is just quite a bit different than last year, right? Where each of the 3 big events, as we call them, we had the V Cheese on Thursday, we had Reverse the Whip Friday into Saturday, and then we had General Wars on Saturday afternoon, and each of them were completely separate, right? So it's just different this year, and each year hopefully the schedule's better than the last. So
that's awesome, Mike. That's so cool. Yeah, it is so interesting to talk to you. It's like you should have a podcast, right? Like, I think you really should have a podcast.
Yeah, right?
And for anyone that doesn't know, he does. It's called Casters of Valhalla. It's fantastic. Go check it out. It's on Spotify now, right?
It is on Spotify. Yes, it's also on Apple, and we have our own website as well, just a Wix site. But yeah, Spotify is basically, the long story short is the service got rolled over into Spotify. So.
All right, awesome.
Yeah.
Wow. So finally, there's some battles going on here. Probably should talk
There
about
are.
the game that we're here to watch.
Yeah.
So obviously, I got some hounds. I got Wusagan, the Grugs, and you just got a sea of green orcs. Or blue orcs. Cyan, they're a sea of orcs. What is this guy doing over here?
That guy was specifically sent up to tie up that hound. Now, I ended up getting the 2v5 kill there, but I'm trying. So in this matchup, I am most scared of the 2 squads of hounds. And my goal here is to kill them while also limiting the damage they can do. And I know I can kill the Drudge, and I'm not that concerned about their 2 dice pings, and I'm not that concerned about Wosaga. She's just 1 attack per turn, and I've got Krug who can easily handle her. And I can ping off the Nagrubs pretty easily with my Aerogruts, but the big concern to me in this matchup are those 6 hounds. I've played enough against my buddy Hound's Rule in Reverse the Whip formats to know how much even 1 squad of hounds can do, and you just don't. With 6 of them, I've got to take 4 off the board pretty quick, and even then 2 can still cause a lot of damage. So that guy was sent up there, and that's what I call a tether. It's when I send a unit forward, because that guy where you had that hound, he was then engaged, which means he would have to take a disengage, right? He'd have to take an alleviating engagement attack to try to get at my other unit. So I'm trying to protect my pod as much as possible. I'm trying to get set up on my own side up there. You can't really see it in this frame right now, but this is a map very much where I'm trying to pod up on that level 2 swamp hex in the back there on not level 2, but the 2x swamp.
Right.
And once I feel more secure, I'm going to try to take the bigger set of rock up top, right, which is where I'm starting to reinforce already. So that's kind of my goal going into this matchup is to try to limit plagues and take the hounds out quick. So
Excellent. Wow. No, that's solid. That's solid strategy. I like the terminology tether. I love that.
yeah.
That's definitely one thing I really did enjoy was learning, all the different, possible ways, like podding. Our group, we don't pod. We barely have squads to play with. And so finally seeing an army like this in action is incredible. Terrifying, but it was incredible to see because it's fascinating. You may see this and like, oh, that's easy. Anyone can do that. I don't think so.
Well, so looking at it here, I'm not sure what happened. I'm not sure where your order markers are at this point, but I have no idea why I placed like I did. That's pretty incorrect because if you do have an order marker on hounds here, you can get height and swing down onto my swag, which is something I definitely don't want to have happen. So, again, I don't know.
I only have one order marker on hounds, which I don't know what I was doing.
Right. So that's why I did it then, was because I couldn't believe I would have. Exactly, because I never would have done that had you not had the order marker there, right? Because you could have gotten the hound up top there. And so that was something I think I talked to you about after the game is you don't want to mix order markers to the best of your ability. You kind of want to ride one thing out, and that's part of army building. And you've come to a couple of our New England events recently, and your armies in those have been a lot better, where you're having a more cohesive game plan as to what you're doing, whereas like the one squad of drudge isn't doing a ton here. You've got 3 different things you're trying to do with the drudge, the hounds, and Wosag and Nagrobs. And if you had just kind of focused on just hounds or grubs, maybe with like Torkolna and Wosaga, or just Torkolna or whatever, you wouldn't be in positions like this as much, but
Exactly.
even so, you don't want to put the 1 on the hounds and then not have at least the X there to threaten,
Right. Yeah. And like I said, I can't transport my mind back to August, or not August, July, and think to myself, okay, what was I thinking?
Right.
But yeah, I mean but they're absolutely right. Like I learned so much from ScapeCon. That is literally the number one catchphrase from this entire series of episodes, is that I've learned so much. And it's because, talking to people like you and everyone I played against, and even everyone that I rewatched these games with. And it's something to you, the audience, to hopefully learn. If you're building an army, make sure you kind of have an idea what you're doing with that army. It's nice to have sometimes a lot of cards, but at least make sure that you're focused. Right. By me putting 1 order marker on the hounds, I don't know what I was thinking with that. I should have absolutely had at least 2 on there, right. At least to get like, why is this one sitting over here? That's silly.
Yeah, and so you'll notice what I just did there is I moved Ice Troll up and I engaged the Drudge, but then I rolled for the Berserker, the Ice Troll Frenzy, and I actually took a disengage and the passing swipe to go hit a Hound, and I got the kill, but more importantly I tied up that Hound, right? And that's all part of this game plan right now of me trying to tie up your Hounds and again, ideally kill them, but especially tie them up and make sure that they're not going to be able to destroy my pod, because Hounds are so good into Arrowgruts, if the Arrowgrut player isn't extremely careful, and they're so good at breaking a pod, because with a pod you're keeping a lot of your figures clumped together, and Hounds are so good when they're getting those multi-engages. So
yeah.
So again, this is kind of what I'm thinking at this point in the game, right? Is I'm still in that mode of I've got to kill Hounds and limit engages. So my shots are going into Hounds. I'm just ignoring the Drudge at this point.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah, it's fair, because even with the Ice Troll, like he can heal, right, after he moves or something.
Yes, he can, and that's the other thing, right? One passing swipe is completely free with him. You can always you get to just heal at the end of his turn every turn, which is just extremely good. He's a very underrated figure. I've used him quite a bit. in the last two ScapeCon. So I actually ran two of them in main event in 2021. So at ScapeCon 1. So yeah, I think it's a very underrated piece. It gets overshadowed by like Krug and Mimring, but it's so good. So
Yeah, no, I mean I don't remember what the point value for this event was, but man, I mean, I know that the archers are pretty cheap, 40 points, but
they're right.
but even so, I mean, you got Krug, you got the Ice Troll Berserker, and you got two. Well, they're 25 points each, right? The
Right. Two swags.
Swag Riders, yeah.
Yeah.
So
So I was gonna run this army at the first ScapeCon's three-headed Hydra, and the only reason I didn't was because, so I mentioned earlier, I'm not gonna get into it, a ton here, but basically there's this pairing process, right, where you determine what the matchups are for your team. So one of the things I was thinking of when talking with my team and figuring out what we were gonna do was, I kind of we were trying to predict what armies we would see, and one of the ones we thought we would see, and sure enough we did, was Cutters with Charos, and it was very good that first year. It was 4 squads of Cutters with Charos and Guilty, and it was it was just a very strong army. We knew people were going to bring it, and we didn't want to go into the event having more than one bad matchup into that army, and the Arrowgrid army just is horrible into that matchup. It was a terrible matchup, so I couldn't play it essentially, right? Because I said, what, we'll figure out what you two want to play. My dad and Hounds roll, and then I'm gonna play an army that's gonna complement what we're trying to do here. So I played an army that was actually specifically good into that matchup, which was almost a mirror match, but I had a couple things different in my army that just made an extremely favorable matchup for me, and that ended up actually happening at the event where I faced that army and I won. So there's just kind of these mind games or metagaming decisions you're making in three-headed Hydra as well, based on what you want to play, what your opponent, what your teammates want to play, and what you expect to see there. So I thought this was a good build, but again, there are a lot of good builds in three-headed Hydra, and B+ and under, for my money, is the best meta, period. I think it's so interesting. I think there's so many different options you can bring, and I think the gameplay is interesting and fun, and you don't have the really obnoxious figures to play against, right, like Q9 or Rats or Raylan, right?
Sure.
So stuff dies when you attack it. Not everything has a ton of defense, and it's just a really refreshing meta, in my opinion. So.
that's fascinating. Yeah, I mean, no, that's really awesome. Has the meta for ScapeCon? Because I remember talking to, I'm trying to think if it was Dysol or not, but I remember talking to somebody, I think it was her, talking about how, like, with ScapeCon 1, like, did everyone bring the most powerful army ever? That was the meta really strong? And she's like, no, like, everyone took stuff that was, like, so oddball, because maybe everyone was unimind, and it was just like, oh, I'll take something completely wild and throw everyone off. And then everyone thought that way. Did you feel the same way, or did you feel even that this year people played more meta armies, or was it more oddball?
Do you mean for this event, for three-headed Hydra?
No, just for overall ScapeCon between 1 and 2.
I mean, I think it really depends on what event you're looking at. I would say for this event, it was, the points were a little more problematic. The point total this year, it made the 4 squads of Hounds army, like, Hounds were just so common this year because of the point total.
Okay.
Not really a problem, I would say, but a lot of teams had Hounds, either 3 or 4 squads. So, I don't know. I mean, at the end of the day, like, heroScape is such a casual game compared to most of your other, like, I don't want to say actual competitive games because that sounds bad, but like your actual competitive, really competitive games where, like, if something's really good, that's going to be literally half the meta, right? Even if you have 200 people, 100 people are going to be playing that absolute best thing, right? And so it could just lead to these absolutely miserable metas. And heroScape has never been like that. There's always been a lot more emphasis on, player preference and to some level creativity on what people are actually going to bring.
Do you think that's because of at least how the community has evolved to when hosting events for either ScapeCon or local tournaments? It's not just 500 points, classic only, or classic and VC. It's like sometimes it's 375, 440, 530. Like it's like the number always changes. What you can allow to take, and like for example, the other game, or I should mode parameters like rule of 9. I'm trying to think what was the other one. I don't know, the rule of 9 or rule 11, or like anything that's limiting squads. Anything that kind of like changes up, or like anything that kind of challenges the player to create an army that. Or for example, using your rating system, the A and under.
Right, and Delta, is another way people do stuff, and there's, there's different win conditions too, like Assassin's Creed or control points. There's, even the starting zone limits are going to drastically change the meta.
Exactly. Yes. Figure limits, spaces. Right. Yes, all of that. Yeah, there's a lot of factors. Yes.
So that's a huge part of it, and that's how we keep the game fresh, right? Is by always changing that stuff. But I mean, to your point, I think even if it was always 500 points, I think the best 500 point, there are only really 2 or 3 actual best 500 point armies in my opinion, but you would still see probably 6, 7 different ones, and the whole meta would not be in the same in the way that in other communities it would just be you would play against Q9 Rats, Raylan, Hydra every single game. I don't think you would see that in this community. It's just not the way the people in the community want to play the game, and people are still going to play what they want to play at the end of the day. It really is quite a bit different in my opinion in that way, again, compared to a more, a different community for a different game, I would say.
Sure. Yeah, no, that's to me, that's always a so cool thing. Obviously, that's I don't think it was a complete fear of mine. I knew I would lose a lot of games, which I did, but I didn't. I wasn't exactly sure on what I would be seeing at ScapeCon. So when I came and I saw like it wasn't every matchup was against orcs or against. I mean, I never saw rats or Q9 during any of my matchups.
Right.
Maybe because I was on the bottom of the barrel. Maybe at the top of the barrel I would have seen it, but anything like I didn't see any knights. I didn't see. I did see 10th Reg. A bit, but yeah. I mean, I saw a lot of variation of different armies, different. I've talked to all these people so far, and it's like everyone's been playing so many different things. They tried different armies out, and I mean, I'll bring it to you. Maybe you might have answered this already, but was this your first pick for this year's three-headed Hydra, or was this like a second pick?
This army, or
this army, yeah.
This was first pick based on. Yeah, I mean, this was the army that I really wanted to play because I enjoyed playing it so much. It was the army I really wanted to play the previous year too, and this year based
that's what
on,
I remember you saying, yeah.
Yeah, so based on what we expected to see, I felt comfortable bringing it this year, whereas again I didn't feel comfortable bringing it the previous year as part of our team's 3 armies. So notably, the Cutters Charos build was, in my opinion, significantly weaker. Even basically the only 2 changes were they have to sit 1 cutter, so they only play 15 instead of 16, but also they don't get guilty. And I found in certain matchups, no guilty. Like, guilty was a much bigger deal to that army than I think some people would give it credit for. It wasn't just a Cutters Charos army. Guilty, forcing the action, dictating the battle, was so good in that build. So he even made like one of my potential counters to that build the first year was going to be Deathwalker 8000, but then I had a game where just shot 1 guilty just kills Deathwalker 8000, right?
That's the gamble.
Yep. And so it's not really a counter if you can just lose, like that. So yeah. So that's sorry, I'm not sure if that answers the question, but that's
it did, yeah.
yeah.
No,
So this,
'cause
this
I
was
remember
the
you were
army I
talking.
wanted to play.
I remember you were talking about your armies before, and I don't remember if you mentioned about. I remember you mentioned about you wanted to bring in this ScapeCon 1, and now switching it up and now bringing it for ScapeCon 2. But I don't know if if ScapeCon 2 is like, oh, hey, maybe I'll bring this or something else.
No, this was definitely, what I wanted to play. I think objective, I don't know, people will disagree, but I think this is one of the highest power armies in the format, and specifically a build like this. I know you can do the Mimring things, and yeah, Mimring's very good, but Mimring really suffers by losing Raylan. It really hurts to not have Raylan to back up Mimring. If you face anything like Ashigaru Harkabis, right, that can just shoot 4 times in a turn at 6 range, you can just lose Mimring quick. And I also feel like so this army I feel is a lot more resilient by having both Krug and Ice Troll, and I really like 2 Swags with Aerogruts. I think 2 is the perfect number where you can get double buffs in matchups you want. In this matchup, I'm not even going for double buffs because I'm really trying to protect that second Swag in case you can get to and kill the first Swag, probably with Hounds. So that's why I'm playing the second one more defensively in this matchup. But in other matchups, I'm playing the 2 Swags to double buff Aerogruts and getting them up to 3 dice consistently. So, because you could put them basically side by side with 3 hexes in between and get 3 double buffs that way. So your arrows in between, they stack. Yes. So there's been some argument that which I think is just not correct. That it's correct to an extent. People have argued that basically Swags aren't good on modern maps, and while I agree that like the old school method of playing 4 Swags isn't good on modern maps, I think you still want 2. I think 2 is just such a good number for them. It lets you do so many things, and I would argue it's the right way to play Aerogruts still is with 2 Swags. But basically old school maps had a lot more what I'll call yours and mine heights, right? Where there's height immediately that I can take. So not only can I double or even triple buff my Aerogruts by placing my Swags right, now they're also going to be on height shooting people that approach. So they're going to be rolling like 4 or 5 dice. And so that isn't really a thing anymore, but still being able to buff is so valuable in my opinion. So
wow, yeah, no, I was just once again, answering the question that I was going to ask you is like, what did an old school map look like? But yeah, no, that description perfectly explains it. That's interesting. That maps were more of gave you a lot of height right away, and now it's kind of like a fight for the heights. For example, this map you have to fight for that center 3 hex.
right.
Which out of I think it's this one. There's this one. I think it's this map. I think this is one of my favorite maps I played on. And I played on this one quite a bit at ScapeCon.
Yeah.
And I really did enjoy, this design, the shadow in the center, all the jungles, the fact that the 7 hexes on the outer rim with the single rock hex. I mean, it gave you enough areas of height and being able to dance around and...
Yeah, it's a really solid map. One thing I'll note real quick before moving on is if you just for people paying attention at home, just note how I'm placing my Aerogruts on the heights and stuff, and I'm specifically denying multi-engages by Hounds throughout this game, right? Because I'm using it's a little bit of a it's a little bit of a cheesy tactic, I guess, but essentially by putting my guys up by putting my guys up there, double hex figures can't land, and so again, this is trying to use features of the map to your advantage to protect your pod, right? So I'm making it so you can't really engage multiple figures at once here, especially you can't engage multiple Aerogruts at once usually.
At least at equal height.
Right. Well, and even at down, so like that Hound on the left, on the right now, where can he even really go? He can engage both that Aerogrut and the Ice Troll there, but he can't even engage the 2 Aerogruts that are closest to him because of that height disparity.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So again, you're just trying to limit engagements when you're playing a pod army, and again, I'm throwing all my attacks pretty much into Hounds here. So and I think that was the last one, and at that point I felt really good about this game. Once the hounds are gone, there's just it's going to be tough to kill, even ignoring the pod that's just going to keep pinging. It's just going to be tough to kill both Krug and Ice Troll, right? And that's what this army does. It gets you to an end game where Krug and Ice Troll are just too much to overcome. You just have to throw so many attack dice to kill both of them that it's just difficult. So that's really the way I play the army is opportunistic with Ice Troll, keep him alive as long as possible, ideally into the end game, and because he just heals. So you have to really dedicate attacks to try to actually kill him. So that's something I've done a lot more recently. Not that I didn't do it before, but especially this past year, I thought a lot more about what's my win condition, what am I specifically trying to do in this matchup to win, and that'll end up being a whole podcast episode, in and of itself. But this is the short answer, and I think this game, is a solid example of me basically having a plan and really trying to execute it.
Yeah, and you have been executing it perfectly by executing every single figure on my side of the battlefield. Yeah, I mean, this between last week's video, as talking about this. Yeah, go ahead.
Real quick, there's the double buff I'm setting up now. I'm finally going for it because because I can protect that second swag now. I finally got into the position where I can double buff. So go ahead. I didn't want to. I just wanted to show that. That's good. That's what I've been. Now that the hounds are gone, that's what I've been playing. Towards this whole game really. So is setting up that pod, and Krug is up there. Actually, he's up there to block as well. That's his whole goal in this matchup at this point is he doesn't need to attack. He's just going to tie up. You're never going to get height on my guys because he's right there. So
oh yeah, no, if this darn tree wasn't in the middle, we could see that beautifully.
Right.
We see it a little bit here, but man, that T'Challa tree is just so big.
Yeah, and so those arrow guts that are next, there's two of them right there in front of that swag, and so they're at 3 defense thanks to the shadow and the swag, and one of them's next to jungle, so if you try to shoot it, it's going to be 4 defense, which is just pretty ridiculous for a little 1-1 arrow gut. Yeah,
and then look what you're making me do. Like,
you're going around the backside.
I go all the way around.
And so now you're swinging at Krug, and I'm fine with that, because you're just gonna you're gonna make Krug mad. But it's really like you're kind of in just a I mean, if I were to lose this end game, I would have to try pretty hard. I'd have to really leave this position because my position at this point is pretty much exactly what I want it to be. So Anyways, I don't mean to distract. So
no. I mean, Mike, this is so fascinating. I love this stuff. For anyone, hopefully that will watch this will find this as interesting as well, because you go play heroScape, and like we said earlier, it's still a very casual game opposed to maybe some other games out there, and still your hand, your palms, you can get sweaty. The dice burning, melting that paint away at some point, because of how many games you play. But still, at the end of the day, like, you want to perform well, you want to play the game the best of your ability, and you still want to play the play style that you want to play.
Right.
And obviously, the one thing that you're doing great too, and this is something that I have to start focusing on, is you're looking at my order markers, you're deciding on where my order markers are, eliminating. For example, I kept putting them on the drudges for some reason, or even. Yeah, the drudges, and you're like, all right, well, they're there. They're not going to be really doing anything. Let me get rid of the hounds.
Right, exactly. So knowing that the hounds can't act lets me do things that I wouldn't, otherwise do in here. Like I'm bringing out the Ice Troll to swing up here because Wosaga's tied up, right? Yeah. So like now I'm just going to have Arrowguts shoot attacks into Grubs, I presume. I don't remember, but it'll either be Grubs or Wosaga, depending on what I can see. But, really... And I'm protecting my backside here. I'm protecting because you could take a disengage here with Wosaga and go kill that swag. So I'm throwing him over there. He's no longer buffed. He's no longer on height, but you can't threaten the swag from the other direction right now. So I'm still playing towards this very defensive play style. And this is, exactly what you mentioned. I'm going to be recording a tournament series with Ken. I don't know if it's a series or it's going to be at least one episode. Realistically, it's probably going to be at least 2 episodes.
It's going to be a trilogy if you're talking to Ken. Come on now.
Yeah, it probably will. So one of the things we're going to talk about is what army do you want to bring to an event, and it's not necessarily the army that's maybe objectively best if played in a very specific manner. If you want to play in a different manner, you shouldn't necessarily bring that army. You should bring a different army. And so this army, again, this is exactly how I like to play the game, which is probing and potting and pinging, and then using big hitters to punish when people have to attack me. So again, this is kind of this is what you're considering when you're picking an army for an event. At least this is what I'm considering, right? Is what do I want to play and how do I want to play the game, and now what army is going to let me do that. So
Yeah.
But again, that's what makes heroScape fun, is because with all the different formats and all the different figures, there's just, even just in Classic, there's so much variety and so many different ways you can play the game.
Yeah.
And then once you add in VC, so much. So
Oh yeah. That, and there's just so much more to look forward to for the future. I don't think heroScapes ain't going nowhere. We all know that.
No. Yeah, no, there's no way. So, I mean, this is why this game is still one of my, absolute top games. It's never dropped below my number 2 at any point. I've had numerous games over the years take my number 1 spot and bump heroScape down, and every single one has fallen, and heroScape just remains because it's just, there's just so much variety. It's just incredible how much variety there is.
I mean, how do you beat the tagline of the battle of all time? How do you beat that? I don't know.
Yeah, you can't.
Every time I want to bring up this point, I hope past Joe here will move the camera into the positioning I want to talk about. But there's a moment, if you guys saw it earlier, that I think at some point we talk about it, is that with Wusaga, if I wanted to move next to and attack the Swag Rider, I'd have to actually leave engagement with with Krug to get there. And I just wanted to kind of point that out because of how double bases function within a heroScape. So yeah, no, right here, I would have to move that tile straight ahead, not in front of, to my left of Wusaga, essentially, to then move to the bush itself. Correct?
Well, actually, you could swing up at that swag right there. I was talking about the other one. So if you want to walk all the way around and then swing at the swag on the backside, I think that's why I put an arrow grub back there behind the tree.
I see what you mean. Yeah.
I might have just been taking a ping at a nagrub or something too. So, but I thought that's what I was doing. But this was a while ago, so I honestly don't remember. But that's my guess, and my guess is eventually that other swag, if depending on how the game goes, I mean, I imagine here I'm just going to keep swinging with Ice Troll to clear out the last grub eventually, but that second swag can even end up backing up one space there, and he'll end up buffing both of those arrow gruts. So, sometimes you can set stuff up that way too.
Yeah, and now that I'm realizing it, I don't know what I'm talking about, because I literally could just go move forward and to the left, Wusaga, and never leave engagement. I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm not the professional here.
And I feel pretty comfortable if you want to do that, because then Krug is just going to swing down twice,
See, that's exactly what I knew. We talked about it. I remembered that. It looks so familiar to me. I was like, I knew we could do something.
Right. So I'm saying in the video, if you do it that way, you would take a disengage, actually, because it's based on your... I don't know. But if you go down first, then it's fine. Yeah. The bottom line is you don't have to leave engagement here.
I predicted that so well.
Yeah.
The timing. I knew it.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
I did not remember that, but... I think it's based on your leading base, but maybe you don't actually leave engagement if you do it the other way. But bottom line is you can do it this way, and it works. So you don't have to lose. Yep, and there you go. You've killed
because in my head I knew that was the better fight. Which, if you guys remember from last week, which I talked to Vida Ryan about, pick your battles. So. Yeah.
So either I'm gonna swing down with Krug here, or I'm just gonna move Ice Troll around and then potentially take a disengage and. Do you have another hound on the side? Is that what I'm counting? Oh, it's an nagrub. Gotcha.
Yeah. I think that's just it. It's Wusaga, the 2 nagrubs, and a drudge.
Gotcha.
Just gotta nibble. Just gonna nibble. Nibble at a toe. One. Nibble. Alright. Question is, are you gonna take it so you can heal him?
Yeah, so unfortunately, this is the position where like the Nagrub Nibbles just won't do anything because he heals every turn.
Yeah.
It's
Regardless
just
if he
insane.
moves or not, right?
Yeah, it's just after taking a turn. So I am gonna move
Jesus.
to here. I don't know why I moved there. Doesn't. Oh, I'm just denying Wosaga even ground, right? Wosaga now can't get back up to where she was and get even ground on Krug.
Yeah.
So I'm keeping her down there, and I'm setting myself up for then either if she attacks Krug, I can swing back, with his enrage or whatever, and here I'm going for the order marker. I'm gonna ping that Nagrub on the glyph to try to get the order marker, but
Is the ice troll a beast?
he is. Yep, that's why he bonds.
Yeah, that's dirty.
Yeah, yeah, he's very underrated in my opinion. The thing is, like, yeah, if you bring Ice Troll and Aeroguts into like Q9 Rats or like Fourth Mass, right? Like you're not gonna win, but I mean, at the end of the day, I really don't think you're gonna beat Fourth Mass with any Aerograt army. So that's just not the best way to evaluate it. So I've always found it to be pretty underrated.
Yeah. No. The fact that I just realized that now, or at least re-remembering it, because I'm sure I asked you about you after this game, is just how super optimized your army is. Like, it's just everything's working towards that same goal. Like, my God.
Yeah, and again, there's
Chef's
an argument
kiss.
you can build it a different way. You can build it with Mimring, for example, and it's going to play a different way. And it's, again, part of this is just what do you want to do with the army, So for what I wanted to do, this was the right build. But there's certainly an argument to play the Mimring version. So, and I know at least one person played Mimring. I think in each of the 2 years we ran this, right? In each of ScapeCon 1 and ScapeCon 2. So that's certainly not a bad option. Mimring is still a very good figure.
Sure.
Four dice at 8 range is still phenomenal, especially in a format where a lot of things aren't that fast and aren't that strong defensively, which just means that he's more likely to kill stuff, So,
Yeah.
so again, thinking about what do you want to do with your army and build it accordingly. So for me, this is how I like to play Aerograts. I played a very similar army at ScapeCon 1 in Reverse the Whip. So where I had double Ice Troll and I actually had Ornak as well to go along with it and Marku. So it gave me a lot of options with taking Ornak turns on turn 1 with either double Ice Troll or hit with an Ice Troll and Marku, right? So I still had 2 squads of Aerograts and 2 Swags. So I used those to draw people in, and then on order marker 1s, I can hammer people twice with 5 dice. So
There goes Usaga.
there goes Wusaga. Yep. So that's just one lonely drudge here.
Mike, thank you so much, man. It's a pleasure to be here.
Here it is.
I love the orcs, especially the arrows. The arrow guts, I'm gonna have to pick up some more. Truly, because I forgot when I started the ScapeCon, I forgot.
Yeah, I do have to
he
pick
was
up
the
some
beast.
more.
I forgot he was the beast.
Didn't you have? So do you have a 3D printer, or did you
not
pick up
yet.
some prints from Trex?
I picked up
From
some
Trexie.
From Trexie, yeah.
That was
Yeah.
a lot of good combos. So, yeah.
But I have to ask my friends and figure out like what are the commons that we want the most. What do we get at? Because I picked up for Valentine's Day. I got two green scales for Jill.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
Because we had just gotten Caligrith, the new VC unit, and she loves Cheros. So, I figured, you know what, let's give her a reason to use more of the green scales, and take use of that. So,
Nice. Yeah. Green scales are great.
but yeah, no, we got 3D printing is the future. I know that once I get myself a better job and get myself some usable income to use, then yes,
3D printer, baby. It's the future right there. That's what's gonna happen.
And again, even Trexie's prices are so reasonable that
Oh,
that's definitely
it's a
yeah.
steal. Feels like it's I'm literally like pulling a heist when I make an order. It's like it's unbelievable.
They're great prices. I was they are. They're great prices, and it's such a good option for people to have. And beyond that, again, if anybody come to ScapeCon or even to a New England event that I'm running, just post in the threads and saying what you need to borrow, and people will help you out. It's such a good community in that way too, where people are more than happy to lend you figures. I remember picking an army for V-Cheese event. I ran 6 squads of knights in Gilbert, and I only have 4 squads of knights, and I picked that at lunch 30 minutes before the event started, and I was still able to get 2 squads of knights loaned. So it was it's just so easy to just talk to people and get scrounge up whatever figures you need to borrow. So
that's awesome. And look, that's the one thing there's always a lot of one things. But one of the things that was so awesome to see was when we did have our breaks, our time to kind of just all mingle, go have breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It really kind of gave me the experience of how much of a tight knit family the heroScapers are. Everybody, gets along really well, a lot of good conversations, and everyone is just so down to earth. I thought that was so awesome. Everybody was so welcome to talk about the game, as it should be, right? That'd be weird if you came and it was like we didn't talk about the game at all. That would be weird. That'd be really awkward. But that's not the case whatsoever.
Well, and I found, it's such a difference from some of the other competitive communities I've been a part of, where it's very much and I won't say that people don't have people that they end up primarily talking to or hanging out with or whatever, but people as a whole are more welcome and more willing to talk to I don't want to say outsiders, because that sounds like, but like newer people,
Sure.
People that haven't been before and haven't known, like Matt Loki. I met him, I think the first day, actually the day, I don't remember if it was, I think it was the Wednesday, I ended up having lunch with him. If I remember correctly, I had to go deal with something, so I don't remember eating much of that lunch, but I and immediately met him. I think I met you and a couple of your friends at that same time, that Wednesday. So it's just like, it's such a great community in that aspect. And that's part of why we do it the way we do it. Part of it's the location, which is why, people really, the location would have to change if we weren't doing food there, because there's really no food around outside, but that's part of the, but we're at pretty much at the airport. We're not actually at the airport, but we're very close, and we're not downtown. And there's trade-offs. If we didn't have a buffet, if we didn't provide food for people, then we'd have to run this downtown, and then the rooms would be through the roof. So it's just and then there's parking, and there's just so many other things. There's a lot of reasons for why we do it the way we do it. There's arguments to do it differently, but again, we're very happy with how it's been going, and I would expect to see it, at least for a little bit, stay pretty much the same. Where it's just, again, a focus on community, and even though there's events and tournaments, and that's still the reason people come. At the same time, some people are coming. Some people come that like don't even, that are like other games more than heroScape, and they still. I'll give you an example, like Gordon DeRoche. He's played so much X-Wing, and I don't know if he's still playing it. There's been a lot of rules changes and stuff. But anyways, he, for him, I talked to him the first year, and he was like, "Yeah, this is what we should do." Like even over Gen Con at that point, and even though he plays these other games and stuff, it's just such a different experience with our community. At this. It's almost a retreat, right? It's
Sure.
just, it's so different. So, and I don't mean to go on a long tangent here, but basically, you know, this is very much built from the best experiences I've had other places. You know, a lot of the underlying structure is very much a combination of different events and conventions I've been to, and trying to take the best of these different things and marry them together to create a really great HeroScape experience for, again, 5 days. So it's pretty crazy that this year we're looking at 60 people ish.
Wow.
Which is just insane to me, you know. That's just, you know, the first year we had 37 or something, and now we're up to almost twice that. So, you know, and it's for a game that's been dead for 13 years. So pretty crazy, but like
Dead,
a lot of these...
dead in the sense from the company it came from,
right?
But
That's
clearly
yeah.
not the community itself, because
Absolutely, and the
60
fact that so
people
many
are gonna fly out to Indiana this summer, 2023, to go play the game nonstop for 5 days.
right.
That's
Well,
saying something.
what was crazy to me was how many people, like, this was their first HeroScape event, period. You know,
Yes.
ScapeCon 2. Like, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I was just
Sure.
shocked. I was like, wow, there are so many. I forget the number, but it was somewhere in the 8 to 10 range.
Mhm.
People at ScapeCon 2 who this was their first HeroScape event, period. You know?
Yeah.
The fact that that's still happening is crazy. So, I mean, it's amazing, but it's just so, it's super cool. It's, you know, it's, and yeah, I mean, it's just, yeah, it leaves me kind of speechless, honestly, that it's still thriving so much, you know, even this many years later. But some of these people, I've known a lot of these people for 10, 11 years now, you know, which is just insane. That's almost half my life. So
Wow. No, it's
But-
it's crazy. Yeah, I mean, ScapeCon was my first event. Glenn and Michaela's with their first event ever. And like I said, I mean, a lot of the people that I have interviewed already, first events. I assumed that everybody was going, have been playing for years, which a lot of them were. But I would say a way more majority, you know, of everybody. Like, I would be the single one now. Like, this is my first event. I'm walking into this family event, like, gonna wedding crashers it or something, you know? Feel like the outsider, but it really wasn't. A lot of people, like you said, a lot of people came brand new to the game, you know, or brand new first comers to the tournaments, and you know, and that's how great this community is. That's how great the game is. You know, these videos aren't for new people. We're just preaching to the choir here. Everybody knows how good this game is. That's why they're watching it. So,
absolutely, yeah.
But Mike, thank you so much. We'll wrap it up here. You know, your work within the community is fantastic. Casters of Valhalla, I have not listened to the new map episodes yet, but I know people have been talking around and how great they were. So, ladies and gentlemen, go check out Casters of Valhalla on Spotify and Apple Podcast. And you know, Mike, anything else to end the fabulous game that you destroyed me in?
No, it was a pleasure to be here, Joe. Yeah, to anybody, think about, you know, ScapeCon, we still got spots open. Also, check out, if you're in the New England area, we're running events in Massachusetts, in Springfield. So yeah, come out. Joe's come out to the last couple.
Yes,
Our next
please.
one is, I haven't posted because we're still working out the point total.
Sure.
Spoiler, but
Spoiler. That's not a spoiler.
yeah, the next one is going to be May 20th. So anybody who's in the New England area, you know, come out, and it's a fun, you know, usually 4-round event that, 4-round tournament. And this month we're doing Delta 4x4, I believe, is what we decided on. So you're going to bring 4 different armies, and each round you're going to play a different army. So it's going to be fun.
Oh, that's cool. Okay, because I didn't get to play that at ScapeCon. That's cool. I didn't play any of the armies, but I had to bring 2. Because then it was like, oh, how much more do I have to bring, you know?
Well, now you got to bring 4.
Now I got to bring 4. All right.
Again,
Well,
if you need to
I can't wait
borrow,
for you to post that, because I'm curious to see what I can come up with.
yeah, and again, anything you need to borrow, just let me or Cody know, and I'm sure we can
course.
hook you up. So
Awesome.
yeah. So yeah, that's gonna be a lot of fun. So
Yeah,
come-
as soon as that goes up, I'll make sure I share that because I do want more people to come. Usually we get about 10 people, and so hopefully we'll get a couple more.
yeah, really nice game store too. So
Oh, beautiful! A lot of space, great space.
a lot of space. Yeah.
But
So again, thanks, Joe.
you're welcome. Anytime. Thank you. What am I doing?
Yeah, it's my pleasure.
Mike, thank you so much, and to you all, thank you so much for watching. And don't forget, I am not crazy. I'm Joe Crazy.